Hi, for this edition of Simply State, I'll be walking around this morning because I have other stuff to do. And I finally realized I was going to put off everything like another 2 days or who knows, maybe another week before I made another episode. So in order to get one done, I was just going to have to make one literally walking around with my day. And there was a couple of things I know that were kind of interesting, but I keep seeing the press advisories, not really for the press, the general public, and just in general, like from the actual Pentagon, U.S. military, saying it would not be okay for anyone to try to create an event with satellite systems or attack, either to pretend that Russia attacked us or for Russia to engage in a satellite-based attack. Or what I think they're really concerned about, which I saw, I could testify to myself, was that, there's so many Russian and Chinese assets in the U.S. that work for either the old KGB, FSB, or the CCP that would go and set off a satellite here in the U.S. to try to create a conflict. So what they're really saying is, they can see what's going on. It just really isn't okay for anyone to try to create a conflict, basically. And even here in the U.S. And of course, somebody who might do that would be like, I don't know, probably two guys you used to know in Janesville that went to work for Booz Allen Hamilton in the past that turned out to be completely untrustworthy, for example. So, noting everything I put together in the thought project, just so you know. That said, I had to go back to another conversation I'd had a really long time ago, which is that somebody had asked me, when I was living in the DC area, I saw that there were a lot of people who were traffickers, especially people that worked in federal jobs. And they were fine with the trafficking, not direct trafficking, but they were totally fine with it as long as they got a payoff. And when they couldn't get a payoff, that's when all of a sudden they weren't cool with trafficking anymore. So it's perfectly fine for me to be trafficked, perfectly fine for me to be beat up. Seriously, mom could do whatever they want, as long as they thought they were going to get a fat check out of it. But as soon as they weren't going to get one, all of a sudden they had a test of morality or a surge of morality or whatever you want to call it. They suddenly found the morality compass and decided they actually didn't support it because they weren't going to get paid off for it. And unfortunately, I've had the idea posited to me more than once that Kendrick was actually President Biden and that Buffalo Bill was actually Donald Trump. President, former president. No, that's not actually true. I would, however, be concerned about the fact that some of the actors for the Russian FSB and also for the Chinese CCP can and do maintain alternate personalities, statuses, whatever you want to call it, lives. And when one stops working, they simply just take up another one to live. It's important that people know generally that the rest of us actually realize that. It's not a secret. So, does that mean I would actually think that either President Biden or Donald Trump are like that? Or that they're actually, like, one's just a Chinese guy and the other one's just a Russian man? No, I don't. But what I do think is really important is that they're both people who were essentially okay with trafficking up to the point that they suddenly didn't get payoffs, that the bizarre setups with the front group out in Hollywood, the fake agency, stopped working for them. And then all of a sudden, they became very moral about the issue. And that's a really big problem. And I think you need to consider the reality that anything and absolutely everything is possible as far as the presidency, because neither guy who's running for office this year is actually in a good position. They could very easily be simply removed from the office, even after being voted into it, because of those issues. It's not a threat against them. I'm just telling you the truth that it could literally be decided by our own U.S. military to just remove them because of it all. Because they're far too compromised. The other issue with both of them is that they very clearly both suffer from some kind of dementia and are way too obviously receiving radio signals that they just simply follow because of those issues. You can't ignore this stuff. Like, it's just basic health matters that anyone would pay attention to and understand. The other thing, and by the way, I have like nothing to do with the election. I do nothing with politics anymore, other than just comments on these issues related to trafficking here in the U.S. But the reality is that, one, stay out of the state of Virginia, because as a southern state, they really never quit trafficking people. Two, DC area is not a good place to live if you want to avoid that kind of thing. Three, federal government really can't help you that much on those issues. I was stuck with a couple for like literally years, being forced to be having meals with them because the U.S. government, my government, if you're a U.S. citizen, your government wanted to spend more time with them. And it was really something set up by a number of Russian assets and some people in the CCP that just wanted to have them around the D.C. area. Never mind that there are people who would openly beat me, had me raped and sold throughout my life. And I was told that I was just supposed to sit there and put up with them being complete a-holes to me. I couldn't make them go away until the age of 39. It's real. It's happening. And it disgusted a lot of people who knew the truth about what had gone on in my life. And it still disgusts people today. And you can't walk away from it. It's just the reality. Ugh. So, as far as the rest of it goes, if you're wondering what events happened that started to actually limit executive privilege in the office of the president, well, go back to the days of Ronald Reagan, who pretty clearly suffered from dementia, allowed a bunch of fake front groups to be set up out in Hollywood. He was formerly the president of SAG, Screen Actors Guild, and recognizing that he received and took radio signals too easily, and none of us will ever really know exactly how much he just ruined everything simply by not sort of paying attention to what was happening with those organizations and addressing the issue. The fact that he actually understood, the idea, the concept of space-based warfare, there's a lot of issues that he was really ahead of and really on. If you move to H.W. Bush, that guy didn't help at all. And a lot of it was just that he didn't really understand people. He just didn't understand anyone. And didn't relate to them. And then Clinton just clearly didn't. No, I don't think we have to talk about that line actually. So that one's just really obvious. You go to George W. Bush. He was involved with a cult group and had investments in Hollywood himself. And then his cousin, President Obama, and his wife invested in Netflix, a company that was founded by a person who actually, she and her daughter lived in Janesville, Wisconsin. They used to hang out in one of the local banks with Thursday Wilhelm and actually clean the place out for money to found it. So, and Netflix is really well known for trafficking people. And they never paid me for the work I did for them as well. So, they took projects from Kendrick and Buffalo Bill and were very happy to just not make their payments. And just plain old didn't want to pay employees. So people just were working for them, which is why if you think their content has gone down in quality runner, well, they got some bills they need to pay. They got a bunch of employees they catch them and actually pay. I know the daughter of the CEO actually still lives in Wisconsin. She's the person that was literally planning to become a psychologist and set kids up to be trafficked. Who I told you about in the Thought Project. I think she's still free today. But it's just kind of important to know this is all going on because a lot of these people are just really out of control. And, the abuse of kids, the organ trafficking, the drug use, it's real. It's a real struggle in the U.S. today. And you just kind of got to know who not to bother with or even talk to. That's all I can say about it anyway. But moving on from that, it's springtime in the U.S. And I'm living in a part of the country that's super far north. It's really, really cold here still. So I'm almost at the Canadian border. I'm literally in a part of the U.S. that some people think might really just belong to Canada. It's kind of obvious actually. But I was reminded of an old story that my Japanese teacher told me when I lived back in Butte. When she talked about the history of cherry blossoms that Japan had donated to the U.S. There's a ton of really beautiful cherry blossoms around Washington, D.C. area. And what I noted about it is that there were enough assets there from the Russian and Chinese groups that they got the blossoms to all open up at exactly the same time. So in the D.C. area, there's a lot of bizarre bioterrorism around the cherry blossoms opening up. Plus the fact that all the tourists come into town and travel around during that. There's a 2-week period. There's just way too much pollen produced and people are sick. Really sick. You feel like you're being poisoned. And I love cherry blossoms. I think they're beautiful. The idea that There's actually like 2 different countries that literally sit around and focus on making them open up at the wrong time and too much just to ruin them. It's probably one of the best examples I could ever give. I saw it consistently for 19 years. I talked to a bunch of people about it. I don't know if the U.S. government ever did anything about it. I just know that cherry blossoms don't do that to people normally. And like they don't normally all open right at once like that. So I even asked the Japanese about it when I was living in the DC area. And let's also note this. I grew up in Dubuque, Iowa, at least part of my life. They had some weird variety of Japanese blossoms there that were really nasty and just gross and made people sick. And it was strange. It was only for like a week, but one of the points my Japanese teacher used to say, she's in Dubuque, Iowa, where even the Japanese cherry blossoms were rude. Because it was just a really disgusting, rude place. It's a horrible, horrible town that literally let in a bunch of assets and crazy people who were from Russia, from the Russian KGB and F.SB, and thought nothing of trafficking kids, and founded a fake Hollywood agency that literally just traffics people and traffics organs and children, and it's just foul and disgusting. And I'm still wondering when my own government's just going to take it out of the U.S. I just want to know when they're going to be on. Because here's the other thing. I've come up to Michigan where you'd think with the cold stuff would be more calmed down, but unfortunately, I've had to detail some of the weirdos from CIA have been up here freaking out. And of course, they're all people that are tied to pretty much the FSB. And the fact that they like to make themselves known, that's always a tricky one. Because one of their games that Putin likes to have them play is they likes to have them come out and talk about how they're part of the organization or signal. And then if you pick up the signal, they use an excuse to have a fight. So the point is just not to take the signal, right? The signal. You could report them, but don't confront them or talk to them about it. Seriously used to go around all the time in Wisconsin and fight with people and yell at them. And she talked about how she was part of the KGB and they were all bloodthirsty. So the women would actually confront her and go ahead and say, yeah, we know you're stupid and bloodthirsty. I love James, Wisconsin because they had so much strength. And they were in a fight over trying to keep their plant, the game plant, which Cersei and Wilhelm clearly wanted shut down, right? So the point I'm saying about all this is you really don't want to acknowledge their signaling because a lot of them are so mentally ill and weird that they somehow think it means that you're in with them or down with them or cool with them, and you're not. And you're not interested in anything with them, so just ignore it. That's all you could really do. That's all advice I would give. And you don't owe them the courtesy as actors for a foreign country that just wants to destroy everything and create anarchy. You don't know the courtesy of saying that you actually do know. Nope, don't owe it to them. Spend more than enough time in the DC to know that. Spend more than time talking to lawyers or national lawyers, local people, whatever. You don't owe it to them. Nobody knows. So there's a lot of big-headedness and hubris there. But tricky thing is that some of them really just don't speak English and try to pretend to, and they make weird comments like the one and the same, or how does that help you, and weird stuff that just sounds really rhymey-dimey and weird and doesn't actually make any sense. And that's how I finally figure out that some of them just really don't speak English. And if you take apart conversations semantically or go through the actual conversations, they actually can't understand anything you're saying. You know why? Because they're on translation systems. So, anyways, I'm going to end this show with just a little bit of the song by Tasman Archer. Back when I was really young, a woman named Karen, who was in a relationship with Wilhelm, told me that one of the problems with him was that he manipulated satellites. Russian, right? There's another one part of the Russian KGB called the FSB today. So she let out some pretty important intel that they were manipulating satellite systems, to me at least as a kid. So I had that much as a tip. And she said it wasn't fair to technology and the advancements that went with it itself. I thought it was a really weird way of putting it. But I think the point is that you can't blame the technology for what some weird person who's just mean wants to do with it to hurt people. because it's all stuff that can be used to help people too. You know, help stop and control some of these other issues. So everything can be used in different ways. But for now, I'm going to sing just a little bit of the song. Or maybe not. Might be too much traffic around here actually to sing today. I blame you for the moon last night and the eagles cry. I wonder why. I blame you for the moon last night. Ugh. Okay, I think that's enough for me today. I'm really tired. I got stuff to do. I'll talk to you later. This has been another edition of Simply Stated.